I have just perfected a new remedy for locomotor ataxia. It's taken me years of research.
You've been prescribing new medicines for me for a long time. I've paid you over $2,000.
Mr. Spencer, I'd sooner cut off my right arm up to there than take another dollar from you if you've lost faith in my ability or my integrity.
You don't make money when people become well. You make money when people stay sick. It's like the old analogy that Humpty Dumpty fell off a wall and all you needed was more horses, more soldiers. We had the same analogy with healthcare. All we need for health is more hospitals, more doctors, more diagnostic tests.
I don't mind putting out the money if I could only get better.
But losing faith in me isn't going to make you feel any better, is it now?
You don't have investigative reporters going in there to say, all right, before you offer the public anything and before you manipulate the media to act as your propagandist, let's put it to the test. No one's doing that because it's considered medicine is a sacred cow. Doctors are the high priests of this religion. And as a result, nobody challenges them.
I'm sorry, Doctor. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings.
Now, what has happened is that the media is now running from company to company's press conferences, heralding the advent of some new miracle breakthrough.
Well, maybe since you put so much time on the new medicine, I ought to give it a fair trial.
Instantaneous journalism, where they'll run out without any knowledge or background on a subject and trust the scientists or doctors for a company or a governmental agency to be the experts.
Now just follow the directions. Each bottle will last you 3 days, and all of your troubles will be over.
Official science has never been good science. They've never won a major war. Not the war on cancer, not the war on AIDS, not the war on heart disease, not the war on arthritis. There's no cure for any of those. But it's like the official story. It's what serves the interests of those in power.
As in the case of Viagra and Fen-Phen, the relentless hunt for financial gain seems once again to be at the core of these problems.
And the difficulty, I think, is that business people have very different motivations from scientists. And in the end, money makes the communication between the two very difficult. The business people are interested in, the bottom line. How can they make the company most profitable? Whereas the research scientists are interested in developing a neat technology, a new product. How can this technology help cure diseases and things? So there's a great barrier to having the two mesh.
With media coverage growing more invasive, accessibility of information is adding to the public's awareness of science and how research is conducted. This new knowledge has made the public wary. Fear is replacing confidence, and instead of celebrating the merits of scientific advancement, there's a general reluctance to accept scientific results at face value.
The scientific process has changed over the years. For scientists, professional advancement has always been tied to productivity. But these days, productivity is too often measured by the amount of money a scientist can gather for research. Scientists are thereby pressured on two fronts, from their employers who expect a continuing flow of grant money, and from grant-giving bodies who demand profitable results.
Well, modern science is now being heavily funded by institutions, multinational corporations, and government agencies, and the competition and demand for funding is astonishing and just growing at an alarming rate. In this age of billion-dollar atom smashers and multi-million-dollar magnetic resonance imaging devices, the complexity and costs of research and maintaining the most up-to-date technology are expanding at exponential rates. Not at all like the old days of Charles Darwin or Isaac Newton. No money, no research, I'm afraid.
Now, even the largest of institutional grants cannot satisfy the ever-expanding appetite for research dollars.
Sometimes the money is set aside solely for universities, sometimes it's set aside solely for business, sometimes solely for government laboratories, sometimes anybody can go after it. And so we write proposals to government agencies. We're usually in competition with all these other organizations. The win rate right now is somewhere between 5% and 8% of the proposals that are turned in actually get funded.
Wonder about whether or not they have.
Seasoned scientists find themselves going up against much younger, comparatively inexperienced challengers, each competing for finite funds in a glutted field. This competition for grants, status, and position makes the temptation to veer off the path difficult to resist.
Right now, I'm looking for a job just because we are running out of the grant, and chances of getting the grant is highly competitive.
Many a livelihood is dependent upon the procurement of grant funding. Scientists fortunate enough to win this coveted cash find themselves hamstrung by the prerequisites of their patrons. Relationships develop which many consider unhealthy.
Anytime a company like Pfizer funds a researcher, there is usually a contracting that goes on between the two as to where the restrictions are, what the specific outcomes are. Is there an expected outcome for the investment? Yes, there would be. But you're talking about hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of hours investment in bringing any single product to marketplace.
With such extraordinary amounts of money at stake, grant recipients are subjected to such microscopic scrutiny by their benefactors that the possibility of failure can barely be entertained.
Obviously, with the prospects of billions of dollars of profit at stake with the development of a new drug or new technology, grant recipients are subjected to massive scrutiny by their patrons and supporters. I've always felt that this kind of relationship between sponsor and researcher inevitably leads to major conflicts of interest.
Scientists, those honorable, distinguished people who diligently focus on solving the most complicated of problems, selflessly throwing themselves at the inequities of a savage world. Now we see that at least those in the private sector, those working for corporations, for instance, are subject to the same ethical dilemmas we are all forced to face. But how about those unimpeachable professors, the men and women covered by the security blanket of university life? How do they fare in all of this?
The individual who is able to attract grant funding, and particularly grant funding repetitively, is viewed as being someone who is desirable to retain on one's faculty and certainly to promote.
Just one of the many examples I can think of is that of a researcher at the University of Paris who came up with absolutely outrageous claims of a homeopathic medicine that was discovered to be bogus by my colleague at the National Institutes of Health. It was little surprise to find out that this researcher was funded by a homeopathic medicine manufacturing company.
University scientists are very independent and very rigorous in their approach to science, and quite frankly are not as profit-driven, and therefore basically will analyze data in an appropriate manner, and they will not be biased just because they have a certain amount of grant support from a pharmaceutical firm.
The industry being involved in university research is a double-edged sword. There is the fear that there will be some interjection of their agenda into the research.
Are they somewhat restricted in that they can't say they're going to do research on ABC and then decide to do research on XYZ without the involvement and the approval of the person funding it? Sure, they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Given this environment, does the potential for objective scientific research really exist? What incentive is there for a scientist to research a lackluster group of findings if these will only result in his being passed over the next time deep-pocketed corporations come courting? It should come as no surprise then that many scientific researchers are becoming less concerned about whether data is contaminated, considering instead what can be done with contaminated data.
Because if there's anywhere that science could be more corrupt, it would be within the company itself, because those scientists are really profit motivated.
Despite these consequences, the lure of short-term gain through fudged research is undeniable, and once indulged, becomes science fraud. Although incidents of science fraud have increased in recent years, this is not a new problem. Some of the